countdown clock was already moving, not toward a rocket launch, toward something much bigger. For years, many believed humanity's return to the moon had slowed to little more than delays, budget debates, and ambitious promises. But behind the scenes, plans were changing, timelines were shifting. New spacecraft were being tested, rival nations were accelerating their own lunar ambitions. Private companies were preparing hardware once reserved for governments alone. Then came a series of announcements that made one thing impossible to ignore. The moon was no longer yesterday's achievement. It had become tomorrow's battlefield for technology, science, economics, and global influence. And if NASA's new strategy succeeds, the next person to leave footprints on the moon may change human history forever. Because this time, we're not just going back. We're planning to stay. Only a few years ago, returning humans to the moon seemed like a straightforward mission. NASA's Artemis program had a clear goal: send astronauts back to the lunar surface, establish a long-term presence, and use everything learned there to prepare for the first human missions to Mars. It sounded like the natural next step after Apollo. But space exploration rarely follows a straight line. The development of powerful new rockets, advanced spacecraft, lunar landers, life support systems, and spacesuits proved far more difficult than many expected. Technical challenges forced engineers to redesign critical components. Safety reviews took longer than planned. Manufacturing delays affected nearly every major contractor involved in the program. NASA publicly adjusted several mission schedules. Those announcements sparked headlines around the world. Some interpreted them as setbacks. Others saw something entirely different. Because while launch dates changed, the overall mission became even more ambitious. Instead of rushing astronauts back to the moon, NASA focused on building an exploration system that could operate for decades rather than a single mission. That decision quietly transformed the entire strategy. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. Around the same time, another race was accelerating. Unlike the Cold War space race of the 1960s, today's competition includes far more players. The United States remains one of the leading space powers. China has dramatically expanded its lunar program. India has demonstrated remarkable capabilities through increasingly successful missions. Japan continues developing advanced lunar technologies. The European Space Agency works closely with international partners. Private companies, including several based in the United States, are designing spacecraft, landers, communication networks, and infrastructure that governments alone once built. For the first time in history, the moon is becoming an international destination rather than a symbolic finish line. That changes everything. The Artemis program represents NASA's largest human exploration effort since Apollo. At its center is the Space Launch System, or SLS. Standing taller than the Statue of Liberty, SLS is designed to generate enough power to send astronauts far beyond low Earth orbit. Atop that massive rocket sits Orion. Unlike the Apollo command module, Orion is designed for longer journeys, improved safety, and missions extending well beyond the moon. Its first major test came with Artemis I. Launched without astronauts aboard, Orion traveled thousands of kilometers beyond the moon before safely returning to Earth. The mission successfully demonstrated many of the spacecraft's critical systems: heat shields, navigation, communications, deep space operations. Each represented years of engineering. The flight provided valuable data that engineers continue using to improve future missions. Then, another major change emerged. NASA confirmed that Artemis II would become the first crewed mission of the program. 4 astronauts. A journey around the moon. No landing. Instead, the mission will validate every major system before astronauts attempt to walk on the lunar surface again. Among those selected is Christina Koch, who is expected to become the first woman to travel around the moon. Victor Glover is expected to become the first black astronaut assigned to a lunar mission. Their selection reflects not only technological progress, but also how much human space exploration has changed since Apollo. Yet even Artemis II is only part of a much larger story. Because landing astronauts is no longer the final objective. It is only the beginning. Unlike Apollo, which focused on brief visits lasting only days, Artemis aims to establish repeated access to the lunar surface. That means astronauts must survive longer, travel farther, conduct more science, test technologies for Mars. Eventually, they may even help build permanent infrastructure. This is where another remarkable project enters the picture. Rather than orbiting Earth like the International Space Station, Gateway is planned as a small space station orbiting the moon. It will serve as a staging point for scientific research, logistics, international cooperation, and future exploration. Astronauts could travel there first before descending to the lunar surface. Supplies could be stored, experiments conducted, future missions organized. The concept represents an entirely different way of exploring deep space. Instead of launching every mission directly from Earth, humanity may eventually build transportation systems extending outward from the moon itself. But beneath the excitement lies a practical question. Why invest billions of dollars returning to a place humans last visited in 1972? The answer is far more complex than many realize. Scientists believe the moon preserves billions of years of solar system history. Unlike Earth, where weather, oceans, and plate tectonics constantly reshape the landscape, the moon has remained relatively unchanged. Its rocks preserve evidence from the earliest period of planetary formation. Studying those samples may help researchers understand how Earth itself formed, perhaps even how conditions supporting life emerged. Then researchers discovered something even more important. Multiple missions from different countries have gathered evidence, suggesting significant amounts of frozen water exist inside permanently shadowed craters near the lunar poles. These regions receive little or no sunlight. Temperatures remain extraordinarily low. If enough water exists, future explorers could potentially convert it into drinking water, breathable oxygen, and even rocket fuel by separating hydrogen and oxygen. Suddenly, the moon transformed from a destination into a resource. That possibility has enormous implications. Because spacecraft launched from the moon require far less energy than those launched from Earth. Imagine fuel depots in lunar orbit, supply stations, scientific laboratories, eventually, perhaps even permanent settlements. Ideas once considered science fiction are now being studied by engineers, but NASA isn't pursuing these ambitions alone. International cooperation has become one of Artemis's defining features. The Artemis Accords, first introduced in 2020, establish a framework for peaceful exploration, scientific transparency, interoperability, emergency assistance, and responsible behavior in space. Many countries have signed the accords. Others have chosen different approaches. Meanwhile, China and Russia announced plans to cooperate on a separate international lunar research station concept. Although many details remain under development, the announcement demonstrated that multiple visions for the moon now exist simultaneously. Experts often describe this period as the beginning of a new era of lunar exploration rather than a simple continuation of Apollo. And with multiple space powers pursuing overlapping objectives, every successful mission carries added geopolitical significance. But government agencies are only part of this story. Private industry has become essential. Companies are developing lunar landers, cargo vehicles, navigation systems, power generation, surface mobility, communications. Commercial partnerships now allow NASA to purchase transportation services rather than designing every spacecraft internally. This approach resembles how NASA currently sends cargo and astronauts to the International Space Station through commercial providers. It reduces certain costs while encouraging innovation. Yet it also introduces new challenges. Different companies must meet strict safety standards. Complex systems must work together flawlessly. Hardware designed by separate organizations must operate as one integrated mission. Space exploration has always been difficult. Now it is also becoming one of history's largest engineering collaborations. Then another breakthrough changed expectations. NASA selected SpaceX's Starship as the initial human landing system for Artemis missions. Starship is unlike any spacecraft previously developed. Designed to be fully reusable, it aims to transport large amounts of cargo and eventually humans across deep space. Before carrying astronauts to the moon, however, the system must complete numerous successful tests demonstrating its safety and capabilities. NASA has repeatedly emphasized that crew safety remains the highest priority. As testing continues, engineers analyze every result, adjusting plans when necessary. This cautious approach explains why mission timelines sometimes shift. In spaceflight, delays often reflect additional testing rather than failure. History has repeatedly shown that rushing complex missions can have devastating consequences. NASA's culture has been profoundly shaped by those lessons. Every adjustment reflects decades of accumulated experience. Still, competition continues accelerating. China's Chang'e missions have steadily advanced the country's lunar capabilities. Chang'e 4 achieved the first soft landing on the far side of the moon. Chang'e 5 successfully returned lunar samples to Earth. More recently, Chang'e 6 achieved another historic milestone by returning samples, collected from the moon's far side, giving scientists unprecedented material to study. Chinese officials have also announced ambitions for future crewed lunar missions during the coming decade. Each successful mission demonstrates growing technical capability. Meanwhile, India's Chandrayaan-3 achieved a historic soft landing near the moon's south polar region in 2023, making India the fourth country to successfully land on the lunar surface and the first to do so near that region. Its success inspired millions worldwide. Japan also achieved a precision lunar landing with its SLIME mission, demonstrating remarkable navigation accuracy despite technical challenges after touchdown. Each accomplishment adds another chapter to humanity's return. The race is no longer between two superpowers. It is becoming a global effort. Yet no mission captures public imagination quite like the prospect of astronauts returning. Imagine standing inside Orion as Earth slowly shrinks behind you. No atmosphere, no clouds, only darkness stretching in every direction. Days later, the moon grows larger in the windows. A world humanity has not visited in more than half a century. Every maneuver carefully calculated. Every system continuously monitored, every decision carrying extraordinary importance. Unlike low Earth orbit, astronauts traveling to the moon cannot quickly return home if something goes wrong. Deep space remains unforgiving. That reality drives every engineering decision. But beneath the technology lies another reason people care. Exploration changes civilizations. When humans crossed oceans centuries ago, maps expanded. Trade transformed, knowledge accelerated. Returning to the moon may represent a similar turning point. The technologies developed for Artemis are already influencing robotics, computing, material science, communications, autonomous systems, and life support engineering. Many innovations originally created for space eventually find everyday applications on Earth. History suggests that trend will continue. Yet perhaps the greatest impact cannot be measured in patents or engineering reports. It may be inspiration. Entire generations chose careers in science after watching Apollo. Today's children may experience their own defining moment through Artemis. Lunar dust, which is abrasive and clings to equipment, reliable communications, power generation during the 2-week-long lunar night, safe transportation across difficult terrain. Every problem demands solutions. Every solution requires years of testing. And every successful test moves humanity one step closer. Then there is Mars. NASA has repeatedly described the moon as a proving ground for future missions to the Red Planet. Living on another world, managing limited resources, operating far from Earth, repairing equipment independently, these are exactly the experiences astronauts will need during journeys lasting years rather than weeks. The moon provides an opportunity to learn those lessons much closer to home. Some missions slip, others accelerate. Space history is filled with unexpected turns. That uncertainty explains why experts rarely predict exact timelines. Instead, they focus on capability. Can the technology work? Can astronauts remain safe? Can repeated missions become sustainable? Each successful demonstration builds confidence. Each setback provides lessons. Progress rarely moves in a perfectly straight line, yet the overall direction remains remarkably clear. Humanity is moving outward again, this time with more nations, more companies, more technology, and far greater ambitions. Perhaps that is NASA's biggest strategic change. The goal is no longer simply planting another flag. It is creating an entire system of exploration capable of supporting continuous human presence beyond Earth. That vision demands patience. It demands cooperation, and it demands innovation on a scale rarely seen outside major historical projects. As engineers continue assembling rockets, testing spacecraft, refining lunar landers, and preparing astronauts, the world watches with growing anticipation. Some see science, others see economics, others see national prestige. Most likely, the future will include all three. Because whoever learns to live and work successfully on the moon will gain knowledge extending far beyond one celestial body. The technologies, partnerships, and experience developed there could shape humanity's expansion throughout the solar system. The next footprints on the moon will not simply mark where explorers have been, they may reveal where civilization is going. More than 50 years after Apollo, humanity again stands at the edge of an unfamiliar horizon. The questions are different now. Not whether we can reach the moon, we already proved that. The real question is whether we can build a future there, whether nations can compete without conflict, whether exploration can unite more than it divides, whether the lessons learned beneath an alien sky will prepare us for journeys no generation has ever attempted. Somewhere inside assembly buildings, laboratories, mission control centers, and launch facilities, thousands of people continue working toward that future. Most will never walk on the moon themselves, yet their work may make those footsteps possible. And perhaps that is the true meaning of this new lunar race. It is not only about rockets or spacecraft, it is about a species deciding that its story does not end on one planet. Because when history remembers this era, it may not ask which country launched first or which company built the biggest rocket. It may remember something far simpler, that after half a century of looking back at the moon, humanity finally looked forward again.